Hello, Troy A. Shadowing Phonics taking part in this year's unofficial Art Soundoff challenge. The challenge part is unofficial. The Art Soundoff remains. So let me ask you this question: what do you think is the most dangerous tool in a writer's arsenal, especially when it comes to a long-running series, or if you're taking over for somebody else and continuing the series? What is the most dangerous tool? That would be the retcon. Retcon is short for retroactive continuity. Basically, what it means is we're changing something that you thought happened in the past. We're changing it for whatever reason, and it is probably the most dangerous and potentially the most disrespectful tool that a writer has. Now, I'm not completely against the retcon. There are times that you pulling out a retcon is kind of important. If you're filling a plot hole, if you're filling information maybe the previous writer hadn't thought of, or if it's something that's very unpopular with fans, they just use the retcon, drop the retcon bomb on the Sins Past storyline, so that now Gwen Stacy did not father children with Norman Osborn. I mean, the way they did it is still kind of stupid, but, well, let's face it, there is nothing connected to the Clone Saga or anything tied to the Clone Saga, including the aftermath of Norman Osborn, that, quite frankly, isn't a mess. And we can talk about the Clone Saga another time. Although I did also find out another idea of a bad retcon out of that. During the Clone Saga, Aunt May dies. And frankly, personally, I gotta say, I think she fulfilled the purpose that now Mary Jane fulfills. The responsibility of being a son. There's not much more you can do with Aunt May. She always has money problems. She always has health problems. She's got her own. I swear she's got her own room in at the hospital. Well, yes, we got the May Parker room all ready for her. Or basically, you couldn't do anything more with her without completely changing the continuity. And Ultimate Spider-Man and Marvel Adventures Spider-Man both found different ways to use her. And then, of course, the MCU just completely wrote a new character and slapped out May's name on her. So, because Sony. But she died in that story. Now his responsibility is to his wife. For the Spider-Rares that didn't hate Mary Jane until Joe Quesada came along and dropped his own retcon bomb. But, so she's dead, which we all expected to happen eventually. Then, sometime down the pike, John Byrne comes along and he wants to write Doting Aunt May. So they have to, instead of bringing her back to life or something else, they come up with this really dumb retcon where, oh no, that was actually an actress caused by Norman Osborn, because everything stupid that seems to come out of Spider-Man's life these days comes from Norman Osborn. Clone Saga is now his fault. I'm surprised they haven't somehow decided that Norman Osborn is actually Mephisto, and that's where the whole deal with the devil came from. But that was basically saying, the writers who want to get rid of Spider-Man, screw you, I want to write this character. I'm going to retcon it away. And that's what a lot of retcons are. Well, it's one of two problems with retcon. I'll get to the second one in a moment. But there's also this concern of... shoot, I lost my train of thought again. This is why I need a script, but I didn't have time to write one today. Oh yeah, Wolverine. There's a reason that I hate Wolverine. And actually there are a bunch of reasons I hate Wolverine. One of them is that they keep regressing him back, but they don't use retcons. They simply regress his character development. The retcon is a complete alteration. It's like everything you knew about the history is wrong. Now suddenly Everything is different. I'll give you a good TV example. Probably the most controversial retcon out there right now. And you Doctor Who fans, as soon as I said Doctor Who, you know what I'm about to talk about. The Timeless Child. I'm against the idea that the Doctor has to be some super special ultimate person. I mean, the Doctor is someone who wanted to see the universe and over the course of time just happened to become the defender of the innocent. He or she, whichever they're doing right now, does not have to be the super special ultimate person. That's my problem with the Cartmel Master Plan, along with the equally annoying idea that there has to be some mystery attached to the Doctor. That's a whole other discussion. But the idea of that the Doctor is responsible for regeneration, that the Doctor actually had all these lives, and I don't want to hear about the brain of Morbius. I do not want to hear about it. That was a screw up by the people behind. We don't need to explain it. Nobody cares. It's like half you on my mother's side. Nobody cares. They've never tried to explain half you on my mother's side. We've ignored that he said that line in the TV movie. Nobody cares about the extra faces of Brain and Morbius, okay? Nobody. Nobody cares. And nobody else cares. Why should I? But that's a retcon that changes so much about everything, and it's one of those retcons you can't change. Going back to Marvel seems to be the biggest dropper of the retcon bomb. What they did to classic Nick Fury so they could introduce MCU Ultimate Samuel L. Jackson Nick Fury. And then they also got ruined Dum Dum Dugan, so you get rid of him. That was a retcon too. And someone who really liked what he did in the Godzilla comics, because yes, the Godzilla comics that Marvel produced are canon in the Marvel Universe to this day, which is just kind of awesome as a Godzilla fan. They basically said, well, he's been a life model decoy all these years, so that kind of takes a little bit of the fun out of him. You know, it's like, oh, if he got hurt, well, they could have just replaced him, so who cares? Like, you know, and then Nick Fury had to be this horrible person, said, now you don't like him. Here's a new Nick Fury, so you can like him. Like, no. That's not how it works. We don't get ticked off at the character. We get ticked off at you. It's like when Roger Stern tried to make people hate Black Cat because he hated Black Cat. And he was tired of people demanding Black Cat come back. So he tried to make her a bad person. Like, no. We're not going to hate the character. We still like these characters and their history and all the reasons that we liked in the first place. We're going to get mad at you. And then there's some really weird retcons. And again, like I said, Marvel's just dropping them like leaflets at a carnival. The whole thing that if you didn't like a Doctor Doom story, well, he was actually a Doombot the whole time. You didn't like a Thanos story, well, he was actually a clone the whole time. Like, maybe just don't put people on these stories, on these comics, that don't care about these characters, are not going to do them right. You know, there's an amazing thought right there. But the thing is, you've basically gone back and you can't, if you change something about the character, like, I don't like what they did with Emil Hamilton in the DCAU, in the Justice League show, creating a clone of Supergirl that goes psychotic, and you know all the stuff they did in that story. Well, I actually, a lot of my problems with Justice League Unlimited came from the Cadmus story arc. Like as a general writing tool, general form of writing, the story was amazing. But when you look into it, I really don't like what some of the stuff they did. And a lot of it is the retcons. And a lot of it, not even retcons. It was a lot of the alterations that they did to Hamilton, to Terry McGinnis's origin as the Batman of the future. And I didn't like a lot of that. But at least they weren't retcons. I can go back to the old story and say, this is back when Emil Hamilton was still a nice person. I'm knowing what he's going to become, I'm not too happy. You can't look at this the same way. It's like trying to look at a prequel. And, people complain about looking at the prequels, something like Clone Wars, and watching Anakin Skywalker doing stuff, knowing what he's going to do in Revenge of the Sith and what he'll become in the original trilogy. But with a retcon, I can't read the old stories the same way anymore. I can go back to the stories like, I know what he was actually doing here the whole time. Well, this story is telling me he's a hero. Some writer in the future told me, no, around this same time, he was actually doing evil stuff. He was actually this person was actually under mind control. This person was... The retcon can ruin... You can ruin a story for a character going forward, but a retcon will go back and ruin all of the stories in the past. And that's why it says that... I call it the Retcon Bomb. And why I say it's most dangerous too, because you will ruin stories from writers who wrote stories that people loved. Some of their favorite stories will now be destroyed because you decided to retcon something, not because it benefited the story, not because you were filling a plot hole, but because you wanted to put a character in a certain position, because you wanted to be dark and edgy, identity crisis and the whole brainwashing Batman and brainwashing supervillains thing. That's a retcon that hurt the heroes of the DC universe. And that's why there are people like me who don't like that story. You can have a well-written story, but if you're going to basically ruin all of the stories that came before it so that for your own ego, because you think it would be awesome, you've ruined years of my favorite stories by having my heroes having done this in the past. And so the time I'm reading these heroic adventures, you're telling me all these evil things are going on at the same time, all these immoral things and morally questionable things are going on at the same time. So you've ruined the stories for me as far as this long-running expanding universe. And yeah, I'm going to get mad about that. Because it shows you didn't care about the characters. You didn't care about the writers who came before you. This isn't fixing a mistake. This is altering something because you want to change everything retroactively. Again, retcon is retroactive continuity. You want to change things retroactively so everything matches your glorious vision. I will not use the expletives I want to use right now. But basically, you. If you've got to use a retcon, you can use it to fix plot holes or to explain things that we didn't know about a character before, or you can also, there are probably ways you can also use it to make a character look better in this day and age. But as it stands right now, the way a retcon is usually used will ruin the stories that came before. And if you're doing a long-running series and you decide to retcon a few things, Jeff Johns has been guilty of this. If you do, hang on a minute, I need to. Missed him. My little bug. If you decide to change the story because you thought of something, well, it's too late. Respect your stories, respect your characters, and respect the writers that came before you, and respect the fans who like the characters just the way they were, because now you've ruined those stories. So I either have to reject the entire universe or stop reading at a certain point and say, these stories from here on never happened. And then I will never read your stories again. And your continuity loses readers, and I lose interest in you. So think before you retcon. Because if you ruin everything that came before, fans of what came before will want nothing to do with you. And if you can't replace them, you're done. You've ruined your story, you've ruined somebody else's story, you've ruined characters that mattered to somebody, that spoke to somebody, and you've done it for nothing. Retcon wisely. So, that's probably the most comparing art Soundoff I've done this year. Granted, this is only the third one. But we'll see how this trend continues. And so if you want to read more of my ramblings on these kind of topics, you can go to bwspotlight.com. That's my website, where I do articles, comics, and occasionally where I can get them out, videos examining the art of storytelling. And if you want to find out more about what Art Soundoff is, and maybe you'd like to make sure I'm not the lone voice in the Art Soundoff wilderness this year, check out artsoundoff.com. So we'll have another one of these tomorrow. And until then, I wish you all happy creating.